Hi, my name is Dave Reski, founder and president of Now Speed Marketing, and welcome to this edition of In the Now, where we focus on uncovering the myths and misunderstandings of business and leadership with some of the world's most interesting people. And my guest today is Carl Gould. Carl is the leading authority on business and entrepreneurship, a business keynote speaker and best-selling author. Carl's company, 7-Stage Advisors, helps organizations grow to the next level, and his company has mentored the launch of over 5,000 businesses. Wow, Carl, you've been a busy guy.
That's why I'm so tired. Thanks, Dave. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to being on the podcast.
Sure. So welcome to the show. So I've seen you speak at conferences, and you have an amazing stage presence and ability to connect with the audience. I looked at your website, and it says that you've done over 1,200 keynote speeches. You know, as you think about like your ability to connect with the audience, is that natural talent? Have you always done that, or is this just the fruit of years of experience?
No, well, thank you for that. And like anything, there might be some propensity towards it or some proficiency, but you don't just wake up. Speaking is hard. It's for anyone who's done it that you realize it's a lot harder than it looks. And if you doubt what I'm just saying right now, put a videotape and audio tape on while you're talking, play it back, have it transcribed, every so, sure enough, anyway, every crutch word that you hear yourself say, and you realize that you don't even really know the English language as much as you thought you did. And when you hear, it's the most humbling thing to hear yourself come back to you, because in normal conversation, it flows all over the place. When you give a speech, it's got to be right on. And to have an economy of words and make your point at the same time is a hard skill to establish. So it's taken me a long time. I mean, I've been speaking now for 30 years, and it takes a while to get there. So I do enjoy it. I like it. It's an opportunity for me to make impact and to get my message out to multiple people at the same time. So it was worth me taking the time to learn how to do it. But it's not easy. It's not easy, and it doesn't come overnight.
Well, you've done a great job with it and made an impact on the lives of thousands of people, which must feel really good.
Well, thank you.
On this podcast, as you know, I like to start these conversations with smashing a myth about leadership and business. So just to kick us off, what's something that most leaders or entrepreneurs think that's just not true?
Yeah, if I take one step back, Dave, and I look at how we are trained in theory prior to getting into practice, because we're given the foundation of business, the foundation of management, the foundation of leadership, the foundation of marketing and sales and operations, because they're giving us the theory and the foundation, it tends to run down the middle of the road. In other words, we are very politically correct. We try to remain out of the gray area as much as possible. We try to build consensus to the extent that we can. In other words, we try to please everybody. And then we get into practice and we realize that at the end of the day, you're here not necessarily just to build customer, you're here to build a fan base. And a fan base is tremendously passionate about what you do. That group is the group, and you've heard it many ways, a tribe, raving fan customers, evangelists, whatever. Think of the top 20% of the people that follow you, patronize your business on a regular basis, engage with you, and then take that next 20%. So in other words, 4% of your customer base, that group is really passionate. And if you can message directly to that group and you can really make that group happy, you can really scale your company.
Wow.
In order to do that, you can't go down the middle lane. You can't try to be all things to all people. And one of the best examples of this is Facebook, where Facebook now is the most inclusive social media platform on the planet. However, it was, when it started, the most exclusive social media platform on the planet. As a matter of fact, you not only had to have gone to Harvard, you had to have a harvard.edu email address, and that wasn't enough. You had to be invited by somebody who had a harvard.edu to somebody who had harvard.edu to even get on Facebook. As a matter of fact, when the Winklevoss twins thought Mark Zuckerberg stole their idea and they wanted to sue them. Their attorney couldn't get on Facebook to find out if it was a suit worth happening. The attorney had to use the Winklevoss twins username and password to get on to even inspect the site to find out if a cease and desist letter was appropriate. And so that's how exclusive it was. Well, once they won Harvard, then they said, okay, we can now branch out what's the next layer? Ivy League. Great. What's the next layer? Not Ivy League type universities around Stanford, Oxford, and others and then they said, okay, once we've gotten that group, we can go out to colleges. And once they got colleges, all of a sudden mom and grandma and younger brother and sister and cousin all wanted to be on the platform. Then they got everybody. And they made it clear that this was for a certain type of group and it was not for a certain type of group. And I think that's the big mistake is that, if you talk to someone who owns a retail establishment and I say, well, who's your ideal target? Well, anyone who walks through the door. Service company, who's your ideal target? Anyone with a checkbook and a problem. Well, you start to realize that that's not really the case because your problem engagements and your problem projects and your problem repairs and service calls come from those who you likely should not have taken on as a client in the first place because they don't agree with your messaging or how you go about business. There might have just been some convenience in the beginning.
Wow. So that's pretty powerful. A little obvious that you really want to focus, but it seems like every entrepreneur makes this mistake. So why is it so common that entrepreneurs just have to start off wanting to talk to everybody or lose that specialness of what they're focused on?
Yeah, I think it's got something to do with the mortgage or the car payment or the kid's school bill or sending our kids to some sort of activity. In the beginning, when we're starting our business, what the problem that we have is that we lack money and we lack clients and we have a ton of time and we have a ton of bills, right? And so you say to yourself, do I say no to this client that I think I could work with or this project I think I can do, even though even though I have plenty of time and I don't have the money, and if I don't take this client right now, I can't pay the bills. So I think they stretch the definition of what an ideal client is. And then they say, well, that wasn't so bad. And so they continue down that path rather than fully defining who the client is and sticking very disciplined to that. They tend to take people that are outside that definition and and I think they get into that habit. But most companies will learn the lesson after they've had enough bad experiences with a certain type of client type. And then they say, you know what, maybe we ought to stay away from that person. However, if they stayed with that definition in the beginning, it's likely they would have accelerated their growth.
So it's critically important to focus on target market and be really disciplined about that. But I think you're saying something a little bit more. I think you're saying that there's a little more to it than just focus to go from like good, kind of easy to win customers to raging fans. Like, how do you kind of go beyond that to get that fan base to really love what you're doing?
Sure. Well, first thing you want to do is recognize what is the most passionate potential client of that particular service. What do they know? What would be exciting and compelling to them? Right. So if I talk to my son about certain games, he's a gamer, he will say, oh, no, Dad, that game's not as good. I'm like, well, it's kind of like Call of Duty or it's kind of like this. It's like, nah, it's not like that at all. And so if I'm not speaking specifically to who's the most passionate, or for example, in music, I'm a big Led Zeppelin fan. So if you were to say to me, oh, well, this song, like a lot of people would say, Stairway to Heaven, best Led Zeppelin song, right? Most hardcore Led Zeppelin fans wouldn't even put it in the top 10. Like it might have been the best song ever written, but it's not even the best Led Zeppelin song to Led Zeppelin fans. And so a fan of something would know the difference. If you go to talk to a real passionate tennis fan, they can tell the little nuanced differences between the players or the venues or the experience. That wouldn't be enough for them to just say, hey, come watch a tennis match. They want to go to the outer courts because they know that that 50th player that's on the move. And so if you're promoting a tennis match, a tennis tournament, and all you say is come see the best players, well, the average fan will say, oh, that must be the top 10 or 20 that I normally see on TV. However, if you say, come see this particular player or that particular player that the rest of the world hadn't heard about, well, the people that are passionate about tennis, they've heard of that player, know they're up and coming, and would actually not only would pay a premium to sit at that outer court to get a chance to see that player up front. So if you stay away from the maybe so anyway middle of the road language, and you focus specifically to who the most passionate fans of that particular product, service, or event are, and you can speak to them, that will turn off some other people, by the way. And you have to be willing, especially in the beginning with your business, to be willing to turn away the wrong person in order to make room for the right person. Airlines do a pretty good job of this. You're not going to confuse somebody who flies Delta, American, and United with someone who flies Spirit, Frontier, and Southwest, as an example. One's not better than the other, but they are vastly different. One's more of a business traveling group and higher end, spending group, and one is a more value and personal traveling group. One's not better than the other. They're just vastly different. And so you could say to a United Club member that flying in the first row of Frontier Airlines plane is the same. The educated traveler, they'll know that that's BS and they won't go for it.
Yeah. So I might, describe this as like extreme focus, right? You're extremely focused. But is this kind of a marketing messaging thing that you're talking about?
Yeah.
Or does it permeate every aspect of the service? Can you kind of just be like selective about is this a sales and marketing strategy, or is it gotta change everything about the business? How do you kind of think about it and advise companies to go after this?
I think it starts with the culture of the company. In other words, as a business, you decide upfront who is it we are looking to service, and then we build the standards and the metrics first before we bring the people on. And you say, well, wait a minute, Carl, how can I do that? I already have a team. I get it. We might have to go retro here a little bit. However, the first, if you're starting, the next, if you haven't done this, is to set the standards on which the business will be built. Right? We only take projects that come with a certain profit margin. We only work with certain people under certain terms and conditions. We only work with certain types of projects. And we say yes to them. We say no to everything else. And so you start with the standards, and you then build the people and the offerings around that. Right? And as soon as you do that, there in England, there is a restaurant chain, and they pride themselves on their politically incorrect language, and it makes fun of a certain stereotype that we have here in the States called the Karen, the entitled woman who, who's tone deaf essentially and tells the whole world about it. Essentially, there's more to it, but you get the basic idea. Well, they say flat out, our manners are not very good. You should not expect politically correct language when you come in. You are going to hear some offbeat humor. Be ready. And be ready, because that's how we roll. Now that they've set those standards, certain people are going to be attracted to that type of restaurant. Certain people aren't going to come. You're going to hire certain people that are willing to play those roles in business, because we all play a role in business. And then you're going to have some people that say, I'm not into that. And then you will attract a very specific type of customer. I think a good example of this, Dave, also is Southwest Airlines. Southwest Airlines has a very fun way, and they give a lot of latitude to their staff on how the safety briefing is done prior to a flight. So as long as they're saying the words out loud, so from a compliance standpoint, they say you have, no smoking in the bathrooms and follow the placards, and here's if the masks drop, put yours on before you go to the other person. Here's how you work a seatbelt. As long as you hit those points, we will allow you to do this in a fun, serious, musical way that you want. And the infamous story is that there was a passenger that was offended by the safety briefing, and this passenger wrote a letter to the company and said, well, if you continue with these offbeat and musical, lyrical safety briefings, I don't think I'm ever going to fly Southwest Airlines again. And the reply back to the passenger was, we'll miss you. In other words, this is how we roll. If you're offended, I get it. We're not, sorry. And now, this is how we roll. We got you from point A to point B. We told you we would do that. We did that. And in the future, you're going to encounter this again. And if you have a problem with that, don't fly with us. And be willing to say no to the wrong people.
Yeah.
And
I feel like you're saying, I mean, this is a really powerful idea. I feel like you're saying not only be okay with offending the wrong customer or be willing to offend the wrong customer, but we're proud of offending the wrong customer because we don't really want the wrong customer. We want to get rid of them. How do we find a way to get rid of the wrong customer? And we're okay with offending them, call it being politically incorrect or just like not talking to, it's not just not talking to you, which I think is what I think of. I think of like, well, we'll address our target audience and I won't talk to these other people. But you're saying you can be so focused that you can be willing to offend or like, not meet their needs or be willing to kind of give up that customer in order to extremely focus on the customer you really want. Is that how that works?
Yes. And by offending the wrong customer, you're sending a signal to the right customer because that's how they would talk also. That's exactly what they would say. So you're saying what they would say. So like, oh, you know what? This company really gets it. This company really understands. There's there's a number of examples where companies I think have fallen down, and I'm not picking on the airline industry, but these are a couple of examples I think went really well. Spirit Airlines, which is also an economy, online, very low cost carrier, I respect them for the stance they take because they don't beat around the bush at all. They set up the airline a certain way. There was an example that blew up on social media a couple of years ago where a veteran, a war hero, an American hero, went to the airport and didn't follow the online protocols and was upset when Spirit Airlines didn't give him a discount. And it went all the way to the CEO because everyone's like, how could you possibly do this? It went to the CEO and the CEO says, look, he should have booked online. He's not getting his discount. This is how we do it. Yes, he's a hero, but he should have booked online. And he just stuck to his guns. And I respect that because the people who would be fans of Spirit Airline would say, right, I go to all the trouble. To book online and follow the rules. I understand this person's a hero and I'd give up my seat for that person. Well, why should they not have to hit the same button I do? They stuck to their guns and I respect that. This is where our current administration got a lot of pushback for giving a lot of college tuition. As somebody, as part of my personal story, I broke my leg pretty badly in my second year of school. I couldn't, and I was laid up for 3 months. I was in traction. I had to learn how to walk the next 3 months. And one of the things that told me I had to get out and one of the things that told me I had to get out and start making money, even though I was still in physical therapy, is my student loans came due. 6 months out of school, I was paying my own way. I couldn't afford to go back to school. It was bad enough I couldn't go back to school. Now, what showed up on my doorstep 6 months later was my tuition, my tuition bill, the student loans I had gotten from the government. I'm like, really? And for the next 10 years, I made those payments in full, right? So now to hear, well, I'm like, what? You telling me? I get it. Nobody forces you to go to college. See, this is exactly the point. He was politically correct. Right. But he pissed off me who, wait a minute. I limped. I had a job where my leg was in a full cast from hip to ankle. I had to walk half a mile to pump gas in New Jersey. We're still full serve. And if you want to check it out, because I'm not this, I walk 2 ways uphill in the snow. I had to walk up what's called Riverdale Hill. I had to walk because I couldn't, my leg was in a straight cast and my car was a stick shift, so I couldn't drive my car. So I had to walk to go pump gas for $3 an hour so I can afford to pay back my student loan. So when you tell me, you tell me you're going to pay or just forgive the loans, well, I want a retroactive check. I
Yeah.
paid mine off. I
And you
did
got
it.
it. And it sounds like, to make your point, he's totally okay with that because you're not his target audience. He's
Exactly.
interested
Right.
in serving the people that he wants to serve. So let's talk a little bit about the how. How do you get there? So you work with lots of clients and you've held many businesses. Say you've got a CEO who's a little bit in the all things to all people strategy, and they're doing a lot of stuff, and they're getting more and more diverse. From it could be let's take so easy to talk about small businesses, but let's say a medium-sized business, and they've got 100 employees, and they're out there and they're doing a lot of things. How do you rein them in? Maybe first of all, from a strategy standpoint, how do you convince the CEO that that's a good thing to do when they've kind of gotten it? They've gotten so far. Let's talk about that first. How do you convince them
Yeah.
it's a good thing to do when they've kind of gotten relatively successful, being
Going where they're going. Yeah.
yeah.
So let's take that particular scenario because that's a good one. Now, maybe a little slightly off topic, but likely a symptom of that particular company and a lot of businesses that have initial success. Most businesses, when they first start out, the CEO wears a lot of hats. The line worker wears a lot of hats. Everyone is doing. It's proof of concept. Its go-to-market strategy is in place now. They are generalists and they'll do really well. And it'll be like that hockey stick growth trajectory where they are serving a lot of people, making a lot of money, some profitable, some not, but they're growing and it's a white knuckle ride and they're loving it. And it's really saying, you know what, my idea works and we're serving people. Awesome. Love it. Then there comes a point where it starts to taper off. I've got my 100 employees now. Now our growth is, 8 to 12%. And we set a budget and we want to grow by 10 and we either come a little less or a little more. And so the CEO at some point sits down and says, all right, how do we get back to that growth that we had once before? How do we make that happen? What's not working now that was working before? And you say, well, in order to scale the business, go from growth to scale, I need to start bringing in more specialists into the business. I need to bring in people who understand how to grow a business this size and take it to the next level, and probably have some more and additional industry knowledge than they have right now, or they at least have the knowledge of where we're going. I want to, at some point, franchise. I need a franchise expert. I'm going to go public. I need somebody who's done that before. Specialists in the areas that fit my future goals. And so that generalist company is going to become more and more, approximately 2/3 specialists, right? Only about 1/3 of the generalists will even want to stay with the company. And even if you don't want them to leave, they're going to go anyway. Because the reality is that they're not going to like the specialist nature of the business if you want to grow it. And so that gives a business a really good opportunity. Now, you don't have to have 100 employees. You can have 10 and you just hit the million mark and you're like, wow, this is really good. I like what we have. I want to go to 5 million. Terrific. You're going to have to start at some point. You have a strong trajectory. It starts to taper off a little bit. That's the move from generalist to specialist. You will only attract those specialists who will want to stay if you redefine the culture and you set the standards then. So when you're going, I said before, put the standards first, then grow the people. You say, well, I already have a business. Okay, so the next best time to do it is when you are ready to kind of redefine the next chapter of that business. So you're going to do that. You're going to set the new standards. You're going to set the new goals. In other words, and what that means is you're going to clearly define the roles and responsibilities of each job. You're going to process map out your business. It's going to be more data driven. But here's what's really important. You need to double down on your core values. And when you do that, you can include your team in it. So we did this with a company one time that hit a plateau, and they were a manufacturing company. and they mostly made wood products. So I don't want to tell the name. I don't want to give them away because they would die if they heard this out loud. But during the process of redefining the company, I asked them, what are we best in the world at? Like, at the end of the day, you can walk in a room and feel like, you know what, we do this as good as anyone else. And so one of the team members was saying, well, we have a design patent in this, and we're really good in milling and that, and CNC this and that. And one of the guys from the shop in the back raised his hand and said, I don't know what all y'all are talking about, but all we do is cut shit and glue shit all day long in the back, right? So the leadership team's like, oh my God, I can't believe it. I'm like, wait a minute, let's stay with that. What are we the best at cutting? What are we the best at gluing? And out of that came their next 2 product lines that turned the company around. And so they still have this little sheet on in the office door that they could close so no one will see it, where it says cut shit, glue shit. And they make no apologies for that. As a result, they are widely recognized as their ability to make these custom doors. And they just, listen, if you want a halfway door, you're not our person. If you want someone who's the best in the world at cutting shit and gluing shit, we're your person. Right? And so what that means to the person who's passionate is the joinery, the millwork, how the routing and the different accents are on the wood. The person who understands that statement, that's your client. They're the one that pays $1,000 for that side table, or $10,000 for that desk, or $30,000 for that set. Whereas the IKEA buyer is like, $30,000, I can buy that in a car, right? And so they'll go and do that. Just not your audience, not better or worse, just a different audience. But the moment they draw the line and say, here's what we're good at, here's what we're not even going to try to be good at, that's when they can make that change. But to do that, you have to start hiring specialists, people who really understand that defined role. It brings in a whole other dynamics about how you manage the business, because you're process driven now, you're not personality driven. However, that's how you do it.
Yeah. So you're engaging the CEO on strategy. You're engaging the management team to kind of create a new vision. You're engaging the core values to think about where you're going, and you start to set that new direction. And then maybe the last thing we could talk about here, because we're running out of time, is the how. So this sounds like a really difficult process. It sounds like once you've made those choices, if you're a generalist firm, moving toward a specific focus could be really hard for the people that are there. How do you kind of keep the CEO and the management team on track? How do you get to that place where you are super focused on your fan base and you're winning with that constituency?
Yeah. Now, let's make sure to acknowledge the fact that the CEO did not come into this easily. In other words, they were in some pain. They were stuck. They were like, listen, it's just not working, or COVID, or the pandemic, or my buyers seem to have just changed what is happening, and they're stuck. And so we are acknowledging that there's pain. And so they're going through this in the beginning, maybe a little bit kicking and screaming, but they will go through the process. So here's the formula. Here's where you can start in a very, very practical way. You could start this process. First thing is, take the top 5 things top 5 complaints about your industry. Might not be about your company particularly, but about the industry. And where would you find these things? You would go to the sales team and say, what are the objections that you're getting? When you go to the operations team and you say, when we're hired, why are people telling you they hired you? Because they'll likely say, well, the other company didn't do this as good as you did, right? Go to reviews on the website, and then just go out and just say, lawyers stink, accountants suck, car, mechanics scam, and just look at the negative stuff that's being put out there. Make a list of the top 5 or however many complaints there are about the industry. That'll tell you right now where the sentiment of your industry is. Oh, they don't do curbside. Oh, they don't deliver. Oh, they don't take cash. Oh, they don't take credit cards, right? You'll populate the list. Then make a list of the value-added services that you as a company give to your good clients for free. Oh, I know I'm not supposed to take it after the expiration date, take it back after the expiration date, but I will because you're a good client. Oh, I know I'm not supposed to have to take your call on a Saturday, but I do because you're a client. I'm not supposed to have to value engineer this whole project, but we do because you're a good client. So make a list of all the things that you give away for free to your clientele that you think you should or you'd really like to be paid for. Now, you want to make that list because the reason why they're being requested is because these are some of the highest valued products and services that your client really wants from you. And they value you for these things over and above the utility of your product or service. So this is the key. This is the key to getting to that premium offering, or certainly what is your clientele really passionate. Okay. So then the next thing you do after that, once you have those, then you say, okay, what is really important to us as a team that we live by? Like, who do we want to impact outside of our business? Like, what causes do we want to take on? What do we want our positioning in the marketplace to be? Like, do we always want to be number one, the cutting edge? Like ESPN says, internally, we always want to be first. We might not be best, but we always want to be first, right? So that's important to them. Right? Some just say, I want to be on the cutting edge. Some, we want to help the homeless. Some, we want to make sure that we're always giving to our community. What's important to you? And then, so you take those three together. What are the top 5 complaints? What are the handful of value adds that our clients are asking for? And then what are our, guiding organizing principles and pillars of our company and our core values going to be? Based on that, you have the formula for the next chapter of your business. At the end of that, the CEO is going to know right away who fits that mold and is willing to embody this and really go for it, and who's not. And what they'll find is that likely about a third are going to just dive right into it. A third could be won over, but there'll be a third that they'll know, like, I don't know. I don't think they're up for it. And so that's a very practical way that we would take a client through, a company through. I mean, there's other things that you would do, but that's a great starting point because the company will know how far away from our ideal are we.
Yeah, that sounds like a really powerful process. And I think about doing that for my own company. But when we work with marketing on marketing projects with clients, when clients have that well thought through, and I'm just thinking about like the digital marketing side, everything is easier. Everything is easier when you're doing marketing for clients that have really thought that through. They've got that kind of focus. So really powerful process. Yeah.
Right, because the client who really buys into that wants you to organize them to have that experience. So, for example, if I go to a concert, I don't want the singer to come on stage and say, hey, what would you like us to play tonight? I was hoping you thought that through. I want you to tell us what you're going to play tonight, and you run this. If I'm your fan, you would know what I already want to hear and you would play that, right? So most buyers don't want to be told what to do, but they do want to be led. That's why they're engaging in these services in the first place, is they want to know that you have a plan and a vision and that you understand the buyer enough that you've kind of sculpted your offerings around it.
Yeah, that's such a powerful ideas. Well, this was a great conversation, Carl. Thank you so much for spending the time. I love this idea of really focusing on your fan base, being willing to say no to the customers you don't want and really focus on the ones that you do want. And I think what you've started to describe is a really powerful process of transformation for companies that aren't there. And we could talk about that for a long time. And I'm sure you do that with your clients all the time. So
yeah, get out of that politically correct lane. It's the one lane that'll kill you. Go pick the lane where your passionate clients are. You will offend some people, turn off some people now and again. Just apologize. You didn't mean it, but this is how you roll. And in the future, if you don't want what we have to offer, then we're just not for you. Totally cool with that. Right.
Really powerful advice. Well, thank you, Carl. Thanks for spending time with us today. If people want to get in touch with you, learn more about your speaking or your book or your services, how would they do that?
So you can go to my personal site, carl360.com. So CARL360.com. everything about me is there in one place, and you can connect with me on social or directly right through that website. So that would be the best way to find me.
Great. Thanks again, Carl. Good talking to you today. Take care.
Thanks, Dave.
Bye-bye.